Hey, what's up, Chunkers? It's Justin here, and thank you so much for listening, first off. Second off, we apologize for the extended absence, but we are glad to be back. And in case you forgot, you can follow us at The Chunk Pod on Twitter, on Instagram, and just search The Chunk Podcast on Facebook. Give us a like there if you can. We're going to be a little more active on the old social media, so that's going to be pretty fun. And if you want to follow me at Justin Rob Doyle, you can do that as well. And one more thing, you don't have to do it right now, but just maybe listen to the podcast first. Then, if you like it, you don't like it, whatever you do, head on over to iTunes. Give us a rate and review on iTunes. It is much appreciated, and it's going to be awesome. We're excited to be back, and we're going to be doing a little more podcasting here in the future than we had done in the past. We're getting on it. A couple things have changed, but changed for the better, and we're very excited to get back at it. So thank you for listening to the Chunk Podcast, and I will shut up now, and we can get this thing started. Holy crap, it is happening. It's the Chunk Podcast, and we have risen from the dead, and by the dead, I mean something happened after the end game. Thanos died, and we got snapped for the entirety of the summer. And we did want to come back a little bit sooner than we are, but a lot has happened since we've been gone. I have moved, so I'm in a totally different room right now. Things are different. The internet is different, and I'm happy to say we are back. And by we, I'm Justin Doyle, and JJ Mitchell is here, and it's the Chunk. What did you call it? I think it's we're back, and it's called what?
Season 2, Episode 1, Return of the Chunk.
Return of the Chunk. We have returned. So I know everyone obviously was very disappointed. We let a lot of people down, and we're here to lift you back up in the best way possible. So over the break, basically what has happened, we did the Avengers Endgame recap, our review of Avengers Endgame. You've had a lot of time to listen to it. If you haven't listened to it yet, how did you get here? Really is my question. But you can go back and listen to it anytime. Obviously, that's how podcasts work. But after that, I mean, I had personally a lot going on. I mean, it was the summer. My wife got a new job. We moved, and we wound up. And by my wife, I mean Kristen. She's. I feel like people should know who that is now. If you listen to any of the podcasts or the Meet the Chunkers podcast, if you have no idea who we are, listen to that one. But we're now in St. Petersburg, and in a totally different environment. I have...
Whoa, Russia?
Yes, St. Petersburg, Russia. Unbelievable. The internet here, not great. I thought it would have been better. And yeah, it's pretty strange, different environment, but I am glad we're here. And I'm actually pretty thrilled with this room, although I feel like the ceiling's too tall for me. I don't know, but that's a personal preference. I do have like this studio atmosphere in here now because I have these sound absorption panels, so I feel like a totally legit studio right now. So I'm just trying to up the content level and the quality level. You know what I mean? This break is going to do wonders for this podcast.
You went into a chunk cocoon,
yeah,
and have emerged a beautiful podcasting butterfly.
Yeah, okay, it might be like a mutated butter. What is it? A caterpillar butterfly mix. Like half of me is still a caterpillar. There's more room to bloom. So just bear with us. We're excited to be back. And right out the gate, we have, obviously it's week 3 in the NFL now. We missed the first 2 weeks, but that's okay. We literally, just as of a few minutes ago, a tweet has been tweeted by an NFL player that has been the topic of conversation the first 3 weeks, obviously, and all through preseason. A lot of craziness going on. But one Antonio Brown just posted a tweet. And would you like to read this tweet off? I'm very curious.
It's very profound. It's thank you for the opportunity at Patriots, because Antonio Brown has been cut from the Patriots.
Oh my goodness. I, for one, am shocked. I can tell you. This man, I don't know how he keeps getting cut. He's just a wonderful human being. And no, I'm kidding. He's obviously, he's got a lot of allegations up against him, and he's got just what I'm assuming, and most of the internet is assuming, severe CTE damage, like just brain damage. Maybe it's CTE. I don't know what it is. Something's wrong with this guy. He has got something going on. I'm not here to assume or diagnose, but if he could just get some help. He's obviously a very talented football player, but I can't imagine after what happened with the Raiders, getting himself cut like on purpose, finding his way to the Patriots. He was already going to be on a short leash, and as soon as he tugged on it a little bit, Bill Belichick was like, "We're gone. We're done here," and that was pretty much that.
I mean, I was honestly surprised that Bill Belichick would have taken on such shenanigans to begin with, because obviously he runs a pretty tight ship, but he must have seen the talent that AB has and decided to roll the dice. But not surprising given the allegations, and obviously the NFL hasn't really responded yet to any of the new stuff that's come out. But I mean, talent only takes you so far. That's
true. Yeah, and what's weird is he did get to play, and he played one game last week, and it was a pretty solid game.
50 yards and a touchdown. He looked really good.
Yeah, fantasy football owners have been on literally the wildest roller coaster I've ever seen for a player in my entire fantasy football career. I'm so glad I didn't have any shares in him. You, however, drafted the guy. And
I pulled off the heist. It was so good.
An unbelievable heist in our Chunk Podcast League. You traded Antonio Brown and Evan Ingram to Vinny, who once he got signed by the Patriots, Vinny I guess he just thought that he found something and he wanted to buy low on Antonio Brown, and he didn't pay a low price. He wound up giving up Austin Eckler, who is now the number one fantasy football running back,
James Conner 2.0 for sure.
Austin Eckler, and you upgraded, to me, in my opinion, you upgraded your tight end from Evan Ingram to George Kittle. I wouldn't mind having either of them in fantasy football, but I would prefer George Kittle. And you got DJ Moore for Antonio Brown and Evan Ingram. Right now, essentially, now that Antonio Brown is gone, you traded Evan Ingram and got Eckler, Kittle, and DJ Moore. It's the trade of the year. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it pans out. I'm still having some trouble at 0-2, but...
Well, in my opinion, if all three of those players got hurt this weekend, you still won the trade. I don't know. It's just like, it's that lopsided.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it worked out, but it's a shame, obviously, that I've had to heist one of my fellow Chunk members. But,
yeah.
It feels really good to be on the winning side of a trade for once. So.
Yeah. Now, your team, trust me, your team looks good, and there are better days ahead, I promise, for the old Jersey Devils. But your team is not as bad as your record, I promise you. You'll get some wins, and maybe even as soon as this week. I'm just saying. You got a little powder
good.
puff matchup this weekend. No offense to Blake, but anyway. So that's obviously going down. We wanted to address that first and foremost. It literally just happened minutes ago, and we needed to talk about it. But aside from that, the NFL, obviously, we're going into week 3, and one of the storylines is the old guard of quarterbacks, and just quarterbacks in general, not just the old ones like Roethlisberger. Drew Brees is out. Roethlisberger's out for the season. Drew Brees is going to be out for probably 6 weeks, is what they're thinking, with a broken thumb, or he just had some surgery on his thumb. And not Peyton Manning, rest in man, Peyton Manning, that he's been gone a little while. Eli Manning has been officially benched for Daniel Jones, the quarterback they literally just drafted. So you got to imagine this is the end of Eli Manning. And if I was a betting man, Ben Roethlisberger, I don't know. Does he come back next year? Like, I feel like he was talking about retiring for the last few years anyway.
Yeah, dude. So, Eli, he's been a class act about everything. He said he's going to, just do his best and be ready to help the team however he can. He made a really funny comment about learning how to run a scout team, which I found hilarious. Because he's been the starter for like 15 years or something crazy like that.
Yeah, no.
Big Ben has to be done. I mean, they're definitely going into rebuild mode. Sure, they have Juju and Connors, but outside of that, I think it's fair to give Tomlin a chance to be part of the rebuild since he's been so successful with them. But
yeah,
I can't imagine Big Ben being a part of the future of that franchise. he's been injured like every year for so many years, and they lost a lot of their weapons in the last year or so. So
yeah.
I can't imagine he doesn't retire this year.
Yeah, I see what you're saying about. I don't know that they're gonna go full rebuild or not, because I feel like with Mason Rudolph is gonna come in right now this week, obviously, and get his first starts. But I'm just curious how he's going to play. They actually think pretty highly of him, and I know that because they just traded their first round draft pick for Minkah Fitzpatrick, the defensive back from the Dolphins. So that, I mean, you got to assume that they think their draft pick is not going to be that bad. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to tank. That kind of gives them the incentive to keep trying. There's no reason to tank. And I think they're pretty confident in Mason Rudolph to kind of pick it up. I don't know that they're confident enough that they think they're going to win the Super Bowl, but
yeah, well, they'll be competitive.
Yeah,
right. Like they'll be competitive with the Browns, who are super duper overhyped. And they'll be competitive with the Bengals, though. They've been looking pretty crazy with that air attack.
Yeah.
But I just they have a wild card chance, maybe. But trading for Minkah was actually kind of weird to me. It just seems like, I don't know. Maybe as a Jets fan, it's hard to tell. But like, it seems like they're going into a rebuilding phase.
Yeah, I'm sure they're just, I would call it, I don't know if it's a full-blown rebuild. I'll tell you who is rebuilding. It's the Dolphins. They're literally giving away everything, all of their players. But I think that's more of like a retool. I don't think they're that far off from being good again. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, they're 0-2 right now, but I feel like if Rudolph can come in and at least hold his water for a little bit and then kind of build on that going the next season, I think they could still be pretty good next year. They have pretty good wide receivers, but they have Juju and then a couple good young wide receivers that I think could blossom into something. They've always been pretty good at drafting and grooming wide receivers. So I don't know. We'll see how they wind up handling it. But aside from Roethlisberger and Manning, obviously Breeze is going to be out 6 weeks. He'll come back, but this could also potentially be his last year. So we don't know how that's going to go. He's over 40. But Nick Foles in week 1 goes down for the Jaguars, and Gardner Minshew comes in and he takes the league by storm. And I say that like sort of sarcastically, but also not. The dude's actually pretty solid.
Yeah, this seems to be the year of backups and young quarterbacks. I think we've passed the golden age of quarterbacks, and now we're in this scary new unsure world of backups and young quarterback. Like, think about it this way. You got Foles going down, and you have Minshew coming on board. You got Big Ben going down with Rudolph coming on board. You got Breeze going down with Teddy Bridgewater, and yeah, he's not like a young pup, but he's still trying to find his way in the league. And then you've got all the quarterbacks from last year that were drafted: Darnold, Baker, Lamar, Rosen, Josh Allen at the Bills. Like, it is wild how much of a youth movement we're seeing in the quarterback position this year.
Yeah, and we're about due. I mean, there's still, obviously Brady is infinite. He will never disappear. You can't stop it. He'll be playing until he's 60. Aaron Rodgers, please stay healthy as a Packers fan. Just hang out and maybe just in a little bubble. Just play football and go home and relax. But anyway, Nick Foles goes down. Minshew comes in. He looks pretty good. Cam Newton is kind of hobbled, but I feel like he's been hobbled for years.
He's out. He was ruled out for this week.
Oh, yeah, I know. So the dude coming in to back him up, I don't know. I think it's like Kyle Allen or something like that. I'm going to butcher that. But it's not looking good.
We got Jacoby Brissett on the Colts.
Well, yeah, the Andrew Luck thing we didn't even address. The spontaneous. You drafted him in fantasy, and he decides to retire.
Oh, my God.
He didn't want to play a snap for your team, and I'm sorry. He took offense to that. But that was a whole nother issue. But Brissett, I think, is going to hold his own too. I think the Colts are actually pretty decent. But your boy Darnold, man, he got mono. Who's he been smooching? What's going on?
I don't know. He's been smooching somebody, obviously. and this is one of the wildest things I've ever seen as a Jets fan. not only is our starting quarterback out for mono, which is a non-football related health issue, but last week against the against the freaking Browns, our backup quarterback Trevor Siemian goes down. And he's out for the season.
Well, he got the ankle.
Done.
He got that ankle folded up pretty good. I don't think I've ever seen an ankle fold like that. But he goes out. And now you got Luke Falk. Who is this man?
Luke Falk, 6th round pick.
Oh man,
199th overall.
Is this Tom Brady 2.0?
Dude, somebody asked me actually the other day, what if Luke Falk goes out there and just kills it? Would you want Darnold or Luke Falk?
Well, you got to see. You obviously got to see what he can do. I mean,
if Luke Falk can beat the Patriots and the Eagles, though, I don't even know what would happen.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they just drafted Darnold. They're going to give Darnold the job back, and then probably it'll be one of those like, thanks for doing really good. Now we're going to trade you to somebody. You know what I mean? And then he'll probably be horrible for somebody else, but. Let's let it play out first, all right, before we start crowning Luke Falk as the next Tom Brady.
And then the other New York team, the Giants, have decided to move on from Eli Manning.
Yeah, Daniel Jones comes in. They just drafted him. I think, honestly, this is an upgrade for the offense. I know fantasy football-wise, a lot of people were like, well, there goes Eli. And then they realized they just said that, and they're like, wait. Eli's gone. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, this is good. This could be nice. We could actually open up the offense and maybe start slinging the ball around a little more. I still think it means more work for Saquon Barkley. The whole offense runs through him at this point. But I think Daniel Jones is going to be a net positive for this offense. It's just going to take a week or two for him to get his bearings. But I don't think it's going to be as horrible as they're thinking it's going to be. I think it's going to be pretty nice for the Giants moving forward, which would lead me to Mason Rudolph versus Daniel Jones. Obviously, the draft capital spent on Daniel Jones, I think it was like the 6th pick in the draft, as opposed to Rudolph, who was like a 2nd-round pick last year. They're both going to get their first starts. I believe this is the first start. I'm not sure if Mason Rudolph has started a game before, but this week they're getting their first starts, and I'm curious, who do you think is going to play better? I don't know what their matchups are this week, but I have to check that out. But it looks like it's going to be pretty interesting just all across the board, I guess, in general, with all the quarterbacks that have been going down. Obviously, Bridgewater is going to get a start this week for the Saints. There's a lot going on in the NFL, and I just want to see.
Giants are playing the Bucks, and the Steelers are playing the 49ers.
There it is. 49ers haven't looked half bad, but...
Yeah, no, Garopolis is Garoppolo. I just like to call him Garopolis.
Garopolis, that's my favorite city.
Garopolis. He's looked actually pretty good, and they've had some people kind of find their way to the top and have been making good plays, and their defense did really well week 1, fantasy wise. Honestly, though, if I had to pick, I would probably go with Mason Rudolph just because he's got more skill players available to him on the Steelers than Daniel Jones does on the Giants. I mean, Saquon's a freaking beast, but
I mean, obviously, turning around and handing the ball to him is not a bad move. But yeah, you're talking about pass catchers. I mean, really, it's just Evan Ingram, and then what's left of Sterling Shepard.
Shepard was out with a concussion.
Yeah, he's coming back for the first time since week 1. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think Mason Rudolph, like you said, he's been in the league for at least a season. He's gotten some reps under his belt. Although Daniel Jones did look good in preseason, but that's preseason. It's going to be pretty close. Yeah. I would say Mason Rudolph's probably going to have the better game because he'll probably have a little more freedom. So it's going to be interesting to watch just all these young quarterbacks try to figure out. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater has been paid handsomely as a backup quarterback. I think he's the highest paid backup quarterback because Drew Brees is old. I mean, for a quarterback in the NFL, he's 40 plus. You got to have a good backup plan, especially for a team like the Saints that has aspirations at least to make it to the Super Bowl, maybe even win it. So, well, I'll be curious to see how they tweak the offense a little bit and then kind of tailor it to Teddy Bridgewater and see how he does because,
I don't think that he is actually that much different of a quarterback than Brees. Like,
yeah, But
I think that the system probably works for him.
Yeah.
And I mean, Sean Payton's he's a very good offensive minded coach.
Yeah, when I say tweak the offense, I mean dumb it down a little bit. You know what I mean? I'm sure he didn't have all the nuances that Drew Brees has, but just kind of make it simple. But then they can kind of take the time, especially after 1 week of film, to be able to tweak it and make it kind of like him. But then Drew Brees is going to come back eventually.
Doesn't it hurt to have Michael Thomas and Kamara with you you're coming in as a backup?
That's pretty solid. Okay, so we'll move on from the quarterbacks. Obviously, that's been a storyline. We'll move on from Antonio Brown and hopefully never talk about him again. So I just real quick, I mean, biggest surprise positive surprise thus far this season in the NFL. If I'm gonna start it off, I think Gardner Minshew has been extremely fun to watch. I mean, last night they played the Titans, and it was in Jacksonville, but it was also his first win, and he was slinging it, man. And he could have had more touchdowns. People were dropping balls in the end zone, but I think Gardner Minshew has been his name's not Minshew. Minshew has been pretty awesome, and I'm actually excited to see where the mustache takes him this season.
I would actually say that I've been pleasantly surprised by Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
He looked godlike week 1. 5 touchdowns. 5 passing touchdowns, even though it was a tanking Miami.
Thanks to Dolphins. You're doing great.
But he even looked good last week. He had 400 all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah,
Lamar Jackson looks very good.
Much improved. I mean, last year the big knock on him was, he just would run all the time, and he showed in the very first game, I'm just gonna sling it, show you guys what I can do, and now he's got a more balanced. He still wants to run, but I think week 1 he just wanted to come out and make a statement, say look, I'm gonna pick him apart the way I know how. Now he's gonna play his game and have a little better balance of passing, and you got to show that you're a threat so they respect you, and now that's going to open up all the running lanes for him and that offense in general. It's going to be good.
And there's nothing better than for him to be able to say to all the haters, not bad for a running back.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. I did enjoy that. Pretty sweet on his end. Okay, so the biggest disappointment thus far this season. This one's tougher for me. I mean, there's obviously a lot of teams that it's only 2 games into the season. You can't really call somebody a disappointment, but Mitchell Trubisky is straight up butt cheeks. I got to tell you, they got a win last week, but I don't think they really did, in my opinion. I don't know if you watched the end of that Bears-Broncos game, but
did not.
Okay, literally what happened was a Bears player, they had a timeout left. But Bears player goes down with 1 second left. The time goes to 0, and they were somehow granted the timeout without asking for it yet. They were just like, "Wait, no, I had a timeout. I was calling for it. You didn't see me," type thing. So they wound up lining the ball up, kicking the field goal, and winning in regulation. But in my opinion, the Broncos should have won that game. But anyway, Trubisky looks like booty cheeks, and as a Packers fan, I love it. But as somebody who may be slightly invested in Bears players in fantasy football, Trubisky, man, if you could just do a little better, just a little better. Not, don't win the games, but maybe connect on some passes, just a few of them. But he has been pretty poor, in my opinion.
That's a shame because the Bears were pretty exciting, coming out of nowhere for the NFC playoffs last year.
Well, Trubisky, all he has to do is play halfway competent quarterback, you know what I mean? Just be decent. Get a couple first downs, open it up so at least you can allow your running backs to be able to do something. But I think what's going to happen, at least for the foreseeable future, is stack the box, don't let him run the ball, and make Trubisky try to beat you with his arm. And it's one of those, he's going to embarrass himself type deals. The defense can only get you so far.
The NFC North has been pretty disappointing thus far. Entirely.
Yeah.
Every single one of those teams.
Yeah, the Vikings have been really weird. They won a game with only less than 10 passes, I think, week 1. And then the Packers wound up beating the Vikings the next week. But the Vikings haven't looked good on offense at all. Even the Packers haven't looked superb. as a Packers fan. They came out guns blazing against the Vikings last week, but they did kind of let up after the first quarter, and let them back into that game. But it is a weird division, and someone's going to have to rise to the top. Packers are undefeated, so that's kind of nice. But it's going to be interesting to follow that division for sure.
I have to say, aside from the implosion that has happened with the Jets, just personally, I think the biggest disappointment for me is that Andrew Luck retired.
Yeah.
I mean, dude is super talented. He had what I thought was a really competitive Colts team around him.
This is probably the best team he's had if he'd have stayed.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
This is his best team.
And I was like, if somebody was going to compete with the Patriots this year, other than the Chiefs, in my mind, it was going to be the Colts. And for him to, I mean, like, you got to do what you got to do. Like, if that's what makes him happier, or that's what, keeps him healthy. I don't blame him at all, but definitely disappointing, because I felt like he had a pretty stellar, rest of his career ahead of him.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And it is sad to see him go. And maybe, who knows, in a year or two, if he stays healthy, he might come back and sling it a little bit and play some old man Luck football. But as of right now, get right, relax, and do what's best for you. I think they're going to be all right with Jacoby Brissett. They kind of kept him on board, and that, like I said, that Colts team is not bad, and they could still win the division. It's like they're that strong outside of their quarterback. So as long as Brissett can maintain, they'll be pretty all right, I think.
Trust in Jacoby, you Colts fans.
Jacoby. By the way, he's on our waiver wire right now. I don't think if we were a 2-quarterback league, obviously he'd be rostered. But I keep looking at him, waiting for him to break out and do something. But I don't know. We'll keep an eye on him. We'll see what happens. Speaking of that, fantasy football content, I want to let you chunkers know, I intend on putting out more fantasy football content, whether it be quicker podcasts, just kind of recapping like waiver claims or who to start, all that stuff. And potential. Hold on, my voice is breaking. Sorry, I'm going through a change. I potentially want to put out some more video content as well. I don't really do that enough, but I would like to do more on-camera nonsense. So whether you would like it or not, my face may be popping up on your newsfeed, and I would like to be the first one to say, I'm sorry. But no, fantasy football content, and feel free to send any questions you have at the Chunk Pod. On Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook, you can search us, The Chunk Podcast, and just send us anything you got fantasy football-wise. We'll be absolutely willing to help you out at any point, whether that be... we can do everything short of running your team. Just don't send us your login information, because I don't think that's legal. So that'll wrap up the football conversation. I would like to shift. I know we started the podcast talking about Avengers Endgame. We did the review. We literally had a hangover, and it's been a few months, and we're back. We obviously, what happened while we were gone, Spider-Man Far From Home, the follow-up to Avengers Endgame, happened. Like, we got to see how the Marvel Universe and the planet as a whole is adapting to the result of Avengers Endgame and the aftermath of Avengers Endgame. I thought it was a pretty good movie. I'm a big fan of, obviously, Spider-Man in general. You wound up seeing Far From Home, correct?
I did.
Okay. I just wanted to be sure. I feel like I remember you saying that. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but if you haven't seen Far From Home, A, you're messing up, and B, Mysterio's a bad guy, guys. I'm just saying. He's a bad guy. Spoiler alert. But no, I thought they did a really good job. Jake Gyllenhaal, I think, is a great actor anywhere. And it was pretty cool to see the reactions of people who might not know about Mysterio, because he isn't a huge Spider-Man villain known to the mainstream folk. But to see that flip that a lot of people might not have seen coming, but at the very end, not the very end, but we knew, if you're a Spider-Man fan, you knew it was coming. But I really enjoyed the movie and Jake Gyllenhaal's performance in general. So before we get into the Spider-Man debacle that happened after, your thoughts on the movie, though. How did you feel about it?
Oh, I loved it. I wasn't sure going into it how they were going to work Mysterio, because in the comics it was always almost like mystical how he created these illusions to mess with Spider-Man. And I felt like the way that they did it in the movie was really really creative.
Yeah, really modern. Yeah, it's a nice way.
Oh yeah, it definitely fits in with like 2019. And also I loved it finally put him in a position to have to use his spider sense, which they were obviously joking about and calling, what was it, his Peter Tingle or whatever?
Yeah.
But like the spider sense is such an iconic part of his powers.
Yeah.
So I felt like, I mean, overall the movie was great. And then at the end, like I have no idea where they're gonna go, because at the end of the movie, everything seems right in the world. He gets the girl. He, decides to just be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and then it gets revealed. His identity gets revealed.
Yeah, a pretty awesome reveal. The Jonah Jameson at the end, and it's, oh my god, it was so cool at the end. They cut it off right at the very end, where you think that they're just going to have an interruption and he's going to be, his identity's not going to be revealed. You're like, okay, they're not going to do this. And then they're like, oh, no, we're going to double down and just say, Peter Parker, by the way, that's Spider-Man. Here's his face. Like, oh my God, it's crazy. And
it's wild because in the comics, they've come up with some pretty crazy ways to restore his secret identity. So I really have no idea. I mean, obviously it makes for great conflict and suspense in whatever future movie comes, but I'm very curious to see how they square it, because
I'm curious to see how they handle that, and I'm also curious to see what happens to Spider-Man in general as it pertains to the MCU. A very sad loss over the break. We apparently, and I guess they've dug their heels into the sand and have said, this is legit. Spider-Man's now not a part of the MCU anymore. Disney's MCU. Sony obviously still retains the rights to Spider-Man. They swear they're still going to make Spider-Man movies, but is it going to have the same impact? And is it going to be as good without the MCU tie-in? That makes me sad. I'm just, it hurts.
Yeah, so why don't you give the chunkers kind of a rundown on what happened? If this is jarring to anybody, this was big news like a month or two ago?
Yeah, a little over a month ago. But basically what had happened was they were trying to figure out how the payouts were going to be. Like, basically, like, Disney wanted a 50-50 split, when in reality, the deal had always been Disney will put up all the costs, make the film using the rights to the Sony thing, and then Sony would wind up breaking in the money. I guess is what they're doing. But obviously, Disney would retain all the merch and all that stuff from the Spider-Man and MCU. It's a real convoluted situation. But when it was going down, everybody's blaming Sony for this not still being a thing. But in my opinion, I think it kind of falls more on Disney being stubborn. It's not Sony's fault they own the rights to Spider-Man. So, I don't know. People fall on different sides of this, but I don't necessarily blame Sony for kind of bowing up and being like, no, we had an agreement. I kind of like how things were. Let's just do it that way. We still retain the rights to Spider-Man. And Disney's like, nah, let's do 50-50 split. We'll still put up the costs, and we want half. If you're Disney and you already own 90% of the media and film industry, you really gonna start balking at the deal you had, the little sweet deal you had? I don't understand.
Yeah, it does seem a bit. Well, I mean, it's clear that Marvel is trying to Marvel/Disney, I should say, is trying to consolidate its IP when it comes to the Marvel characters. Because they're also, I mean, they own Hulu, but they're also going to be doing this Disney streaming service.
Yeah,
and they're
Disney
investing
Plus
in all these TV shows and all that with the different characters. So it's not surprising to me that they're made a power play to try and get Spidey back into the fold. But
the thing is, they weren't. Yeah, go ahead.
It seems a bit greedy because, to me, the fans don't give a crap who gets the money in the end. They just want to see Spidey.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So now they don't even have creative influence over the movies.
Yeah, they weren't trying to get the rights to Spider-Man back because that's a whole nother legal battle that Sony has the rights, and they were just trying to level it off, saying, "Look, you need us more than we need you." And Sony's like, "Oh, really? We have Spider-Man, so how about we just say no Spider-Man and you tell me what we need?" You know what I mean? Like it is like a weird.
Is it forever that they own the rights?
That's the thing. I have no idea about the longevity, but I think it had something to do with they had to keep making movies using Spider-Man or even X-Men or all those things. Obviously, whenever Fox had it, but that's now under Disney's control. But you had to keep making the movies every X amount of years. It might have been 3 or 5 years, but if your rights to the movie or the franchise to the character would end if you did not use said character in a movie within a certain amount of time. So if Sony keeps doing this and this iteration of Spider-Man crumbles, they're going to have to reboot it again to maintain the rights. It really is a train wreck.
And it's rough because Spider-Man is to Marvel what Superman or Batman is to DC. Like, Spider-Man's their bread and butter.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And marketability, especially after Robert Downey Jr. is now gone. Spoiler alert, Iron Man died. So now he's gone in the MCU, and you're going to take away Spider-Man, who was supposed to kind of be that next chapter of the MCU, the next big thing. I can't believe that Disney would want to walk away from something like that. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But here we are, sad.
Here we are,
and talking about it.
I wonder, how much the relative success of the Venom movie had to do with it too.
Yeah, yeah.
It wasn't the greatest movie. Venom's one of my favorite.
Well, I think they're making a second one, and
they are.
Yeah, but
him and Spidey team up to beat Carnage, so. It makes sense to me that they may want to include Spider-Man in that movie.
That is the only positive that can come from this is we can get a Venom Spider-Man team up, and I think Sony still owns a majority of the villains of Spider-Man too. So I don't know. It's going to be weird because they were going to do a Sinister Six movie with just the villains, and now if they have Spider-Man back, we could do Sinister Six versus Lonely Spider-Man with no other superhero friends, which is going to be sad. But yeah, it is what it is, and we'll see how it plays out. I still, in the back of my mind, think that somebody's going to cave at some point. They'll go back to the table. They can jockey and position all they want, but I think at the end of the day, it's too much money just gone to waste. I think at that point. Spider-Man is going to make money no matter what, so Sony's really not troubled. But I just don't think. I think for the sanctity of the MCU, it just makes sense for them to just pony up and deal with whatever, just to get the rights back to Tom Holland and Spider-Man. Because I do really like Tom Holland as Spider-Man, and if we lose that, I'll be more upset about that than Spider-Man being gone from the MCU. I just like Tom Holland as the Spider-Man and the story that they've gotten so far.
This iteration is definitely the best by far. Not to mention, I think the Spider-Man movies stand out as some of the best Marvel cinematic movies. So
yeah, I would.
Hopefully they come up with something.
I would agree. Anyway, that made me sad over the time. So like I said, a lot has happened. We watched Spider-Man, and then we watched Spider-Man disappear. Okay, so we haven't really laid out a framework for Chunk Podcasts in the future, but it's going to be ideally weekly. We're at least putting something out. Like I said, for fantasy football, I'm going to try to handle some more of that and get a couple quicker fantasy football podcasts out. I do want to focus on that quite a bit. But again, as news breaks, sports news, obviously the basketball season's coming back. Hockey just started. We don't really talk about hockey enough. But we might dabble a smidgen into the old hockey universe. But like I said, we're going to get back into it, back into the routine. Chunk podcasts are going to return more frequently, and if it would do us a great service if you could go to iTunes and rate, review, tell us what you think, any kind of feedback. We'd love it. We would love to hear from you, and it really does help with the podcast and its notoriety on the interwebs. You know, nothing says this podcast is legit like all those 5-star ratings. So if you could go to iTunes and do that, that would be much appreciated. JJ, anything for the good of the group? Would you like to share anything big going on in your world, or you want to just give a shout out to your fantasy team this week? What do you got? Anything?
No, I'm excited to get back into it. I think we've got a lot of stuff to talk about between sports and entertainment, and
yes, sir. So at the Chunk Pod on social media, at Justin Rob Doyle on the old social media, and JJ, if you want to find him on Facebook, give him an ad. Whichever you want to do, it's fine. Blow up his inbox on the old Facebook. But yeah, thank you guys for listening, and we're looking forward to Chunk Season 2. What was it? The Rise of the Chunk? I forget what you called it.
Return of the Chunk.
Return of the Chunk. If the Chunk rose, that's a different story. But the Chunk has returned. Thank you, and we're going to see you next week. And by see you, I mean you won't see us.
You'll hear us.
You'll hear
talk
us
about stuff
next week. Okay, see you later.